Hey guys, it's Tia Brad coming back at you with another video. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to go ahead and continue our conversation about traumatic bonding. And so this is a conversation that I've been having with a lot of my clients over the past almost 11 years that I've been in the field. And I've noticed that a lot of my clients just simply can't wrap their mind around traumatic bonding. It's something that involves a host of factors. And I think I posted an article this past Wednesday on traumatic bonding. In that article, you're going to see where I mention both protective and risk factors. And I also mention a bunch of other components that contribute to traumatic bonding. So I'm going to put the definition of traumatic bonding right here so that you can kind of keep it in the forefront of your mind as we move along. The benefits for you in this video today is that I'm going to be offering you tips on how to cope with the after effects or consequences of traumatic bonding. I know that when you've emotionally bonded with someone, it's really hard to detach. Even when you know you have to, or even when you may even want to, it's really hard. So I want to talk about some of the ways that I think that you can cope with traumatic bonding and some of the things that you can do to push yourself toward recovery and a renewed mindset. Okay, so the first thing that I want to suggest is something that a lot of people struggle with in today's world because there's social media, there's so much hustle and bustle of everyday life. There's also a lot of energy during the day, so it's really hard to focus specifically on journaling. So I suggest journaling, and here's why. I think journaling allows you to be mindful. It's a mindfulness-based activity. When you journal, you are journaling in the quiet typically. You are sitting with yourself, no one else around you distracting you, right? You are in your head, so you're intellectualizing, you're processing, you're trying to figure things out. You are also taking time out for yourself. So it's sort of a self-care technique in a way. And lastly, you are allowing yourself to process your thoughts and emotions concurrently. So you're able to process how you're feeling in the moment, but then you're also able to process what you're thinking. And so those two things together helps you to be mindful and to stay focused. So when you journal, you definitely don't want to journal like you would when, maybe you were a teenager, right? Where you put, dear your name, and then, write this long letter to yourself, or you don't want to rant and rave. You want to sit with your emotions and your thoughts, and you want to just freely start writing about how you're feeling in that moment, why you think you might be feeling the way that you're feeling. And then you also want to give yourself time to process how you're going to construct your journal, right? So you don't want to be so structured that it starts to feel like an assignment or a homework assignment. You want to just write everything that's on your heart and everything that's on your mind. Right? You can write in the third person as well. You don't have to say, I'm feeling this way or that way, right? You could say, Sarah right now is feeling overwhelmed, right? Or you can write in the first person, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Whichever way is comfortable for you, right? Okay, so journaling is the first step. The other reason, I guess I should say, why I encourage journaling is because you have some kind of concrete proof, right? You have a book or some kind of concrete proof that says, hey, here's what I put in this book, and I might want to share it with a therapist, or I might want to open the book up at a later time and look back on on what I used to deal with, right? Or you can take the book after you have kind of overcome those feelings and burn it, right? Rip it up, shred it, throw it in the trash, flush it, whatever you need to do. So journaling can be extremely important. That's why I use it a lot with my clients. The next thing is therapy. Okay, I know a lot of people have had difficult relationships with therapists, right? Part of it is because managed healthcare has stepped in, and there's a very brief direct way that a lot of therapists do therapy today. Sometimes you can even get cut off right in the middle of healing and processing and exploring because insurance companies say, you know what, I don't see any reason for us to continue to pay for your therapy. You're doing well, or your therapist hasn't diagnosed you with something severe. So because of that, sometimes therapy gets cut short, okay? On the other side of that, some people just don't click with the therapist, right? It's going to take a little bit of time to find your fit. And so a lot of people have had a hard time with therapy, but I do want to encourage you to give therapy a try. You can find a really good therapist if you just keep looking. I suggest that you find a therapist who has some kind of existential background like I have. Basically what existentialism is it's the focus on natural human suffering, and it has a very spiritual and philosophical foundation. You're not going to get a lot of techniques and a lot of like tools, where you're going to be asked to, learn something or do homework or do assignments. So I encourage you to look for someone who has an existential background where they're going to be able to process things philosophically and spiritually with you. The other technique or therapeutic modality that I think is important is person-centered. So you want to find a therapist who's going to focus specifically on you, who's going to have unconditional positive regard for you, right? We don't want a therapist who's going to just like throw techniques at us. We want a therapist that's going to talk to us and process things and understand our emotions, okay? The next suggestion is trauma-informed therapy. So by trade, I'm an existential trauma therapist, and I focus on how trauma has affected the human psyche and the human will and motivation and the human spirit. So my existential trauma-informed approach is typically used with children, but I also do so with adults as well. And I find that it's most beneficial to them to have somebody that can sit in a therapist seat and say, look, I've been through this too, and I can totally relate to you. Here's some appropriate self-disclosure. Here's what I learned along the process. Here's what a lot of people have experienced. I suggest you try it this way. Maybe explore this, and that, right? It's a very free approach, but it's an approach that can also offer you skills and tools if needed. So trauma-informed therapy is extremely helpful if you find the right therapist. The next one is support groups. So I encourage you to consider the impact of support groups, right? Support groups can be very helpful if you find the right group of people. It's a pretty laxed environment, right? It's very informal. So you would go to a support group in a particular location, and you would just share your experiences with people who have experienced what you have. It can be very, very healing, but it can also be educational. All right. The next thing is education. I encourage you to do your own self-education, right? Self-teaching, self-help, whatever you want to call it. I encourage you to go to your nearest bookstore and look for the topic of traumatic bonding. I will actually post a link to a book review that I did. I'm trying to think if I still have it. I think I do. And I have a book review that I did on an awesome book, and it's explicitly about traumatic bonding. So I will post in the description box below that book review link for you, and you can get the name of the book and the price for that book as well. I encourage you to go to your nearest bookstore and buy it. Get it, read it, learn. It kind of helps expand your thinking on the topic. Okay. And then last but not least, spiritual care. That spiritual care could be anything from, going to a pastor, right? Going to a nun, going to a bishop, going to a spiritual counselor, going to a Christian counselor, whatever it is. I think it's good to have a spiritual perspective when you are suffering. I think that we are made up of, we're made up of neurological components, we're made up of biological components, we're made up of psychological, physical, but we're also made up of spiritual components. And if we don't nurture that part of ourselves, I personally can't see how we're going to be in the right set of mind to heal, right? So you have to tend to that spiritual side of who you are. So let me run through these really quickly. I know it was a lot. So the first thing that I suggest was journaling. The second thing I suggested is therapy, existential or person-centered. The next thing was trauma-informed therapy, right? So somebody who understands trauma and somebody who can give you skills and help you build insight from a trauma perspective. Support groups was the next one. So support groups so that you can have other people who are peers to you support you, educate you, share experiences. Education, so self-help books, articles, websites, video blogs like this one, whatever you can, educate yourself. And lastly, spiritual guidance and spiritual care. Okay, guys, so thanks so much for being with me today. I hope I made it up to you this week by posting 3 videos. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to post a video on Monday, but I typically post on Mondays and Fridays. We're going to continue to talk about trauma. We are now officially done with the topic of traumatic bonding, and we're going to move forward into childhood trauma, and I'm going to talk about some myths. We're also going to start researching some other areas of childhood trauma as well. So stay tuned for that. I encourage you guys to give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. When you do that, you're pushing the video to the top of the search results in YouTube. And when you do that, you are helping other people on YouTube find the video. So if it was helpful to you, I encourage you guys to give this video a thumbs up. If you want to find out more information about my upcoming videos, which come out Monday and Friday, hit the subscribe button, because then that way, when I post a new video, you'll be contacted as soon as the video comes out. All right, guys, thanks so much for being with me today, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next video. Bye-bye, guys. Bye.